What if Dexter Morgan wasn't the only voice inside his head? What if, buried beneath years of blood, lies, and secrets, there was another shadow one that whispered in the dark, one that pushed him further than he ever wanted to go? This is where Charley enters, not just a character, not just a name, but a presence that follows Dexter like a ghost. Some fans call him an ally. Others believe he's a demon made from Dexter's own guilt. Either way, Charley changes everything. To understand Charley, we have to step back and look at the world Dexter inhabits. Dexter Morgan has always lived two lives: the caring father, the dependable coworker, the man who blends into the crowd, and then the killer, the one who cannot resist the pull of his dark passenger. It's this duality, the mask of normal life covering the chaos beneath, that defines Dexter's entire story. *1 Dexter, new blood, sometimes called Dexter Resurrection, arrived. It gave us a new chapter in his saga. Years had passed since he faked his death and vanished into the wilderness. In this new setting, Dexter tries to bury his old self under a quiet life, but the past always claws its way back. And when it does, it doesn't return gently. It comes back in haunting, violent, and deeply symbolic ways. That's where Charley fits in. He is not a loud presence. He doesn't storm into Dexter's life with big speeches or bloody scenes. Instead, Charley exists almost like a whisper in the background, easy to miss if you're not paying attention, but impossible to ignore once you notice him. He feels less like a person and more like a shadow that has learned to speak, a reminder that no matter how far Dexter runs, his darkness will always find him. Some fans at first brushed off Charley as just another supporting character, a detail to fill the background of Dexter's world. But when you really study his scenes, the weight of his presence becomes clear. He doesn't just pass through the story, he bends it. He reflects Dexter's inner struggle in a way no other figure has managed to. That's why so many viewers started asking, who or what is Charley really? What makes this question even more fascinating is the tradition within the Dexter universe. Since the beginning, Dexter has been haunted by voices. Harry, his adoptive father, is the most famous example. Long after Harry died, he lived on in Dexter's mind as a guiding spirit, a voice of reason, sometimes a devil's advocate. Harry wasn't a ghost, but a projection of Dexter's conscience, a way for his fractured mind to argue with itself. Charley seems to come from that same tradition, but darker, sharper, more unsettling. Unlike Harry, who represented rules and order, Charley leans closer to chaos. He isn't there to calm Dexter down or remind him of the code. Instead, he feels like temptation. He's the nudge that says, go further, take another step, cross that line. Charley doesn't give Dexter structure. He strips it away. And this is where his role becomes important. Because Dexter, New Blood, isn't just about a killer hiding in plain sight. It's about whether Dexter can ever truly bury his urges, whether redemption is even possible for him. By introducing Charley, the story reminds us, even if Dexter hides his knives, even if he silences the dark passenger for a while, the darkness always finds a new face, a new name, a new form to haunt him. In this way, Charley is less of a man and more of a message. A message that says, you can never escape what you are. And that message is what makes Dexter's attempt at a normal life feel so fragile, so doomed. From the start. Charley, just the name alone feels out of place in Dexter's world. He isn't introduced with flashing lights or dramatic fanfare. He doesn't stand on stage and announce himself. Instead, Charley slips into the story quietly, almost as if he was already there, waiting in the dark corners of Dexter's mind. That's part of his mystery. He doesn't feel like a stranger arriving. He feels like someone Dexter has always known, but we're only now allowed to see. So who is he? On the surface, Charley looks like just another man with secrets. He's rough around the edges, not polished, not the kind of person you'd trust at first sight. But that's what makes him interesting. He mirrors Dexter in subtle ways. Just like Dexter, Charley has that air of being both present and absent, someone who lives in the world but doesn't quite belong to it. Asterisk when Dexter interacts with Charley, it's different from how he deals with everyone else, with his co-workers, or even with his family. Dexter always wears a mask, polite, measured, fake, but with Charley, the mask slips. There's a rawness in their exchanges, as if Dexter doesn't need to hide who he really is. And that is a huge clue, because in Dexter's universe, whenever someone makes him drop his mask, it usually means they're not entirely real. Asterisk some fans believe Charley is a real person, a partner from Dexter's past, someone who knew his darkest truths and survived long enough to haunt him again. Others argue Charley never existed at all. They see him as another voice in Dexter's head, like Harry, only this time more dangerous. And that theory has weight, because Charley doesn't behave like a normal character. He shows up in moments of stress, whispers the kinds of things Dexter would never admit out loud, and then fades just as quickly. Almost like smoke, almost like memory. Asterisk, but here's what makes Charley stand out. If Harry was Dexter's conscience, the teacher reminding him of rules and codes, then Charley feels like the opposite. He's the voice that says forget the code, forget the rules, just give in. He tempts Dexter to abandon restraint, to embrace the monster fully, without excuses or masks. That makes Charley not just another hallucination, but a rival voice battling for control of Dexter's mind. Asterisk there's another layer too. Look at how Charley is framed in scenes. He isn't lit like a normal character. He often appears in shadows, half hidden, as if the camera itself is telling us he belongs more to Dexter's imagination than the real world. And when Dexter reacts to him, it isn't always with surprise, it's with recognition. Like he knows Charley already, even if we don't. Asterisk this is what makes Charley fascinating. He's not just another name on the cast list, he's a puzzle. A presence that forces us to ask, is Dexter talking to a man from his past, or is he talking to the darkest corner of himself? Asterisk, and that's the brilliance of the writing. Charley works both ways. If you want to believe he's real, you can. The story gives you enough breadcrumbs, mentions, hints, shared history that you can stitch together a human version of Charley. But if you lean the other way, if you believe Dexter is hallucinating him, then Charley becomes even more terrifying. Because that would mean Dexter's darkness has grown so strong, so hungry, that it has split off into a whole new personality. A devil with its own name. Asterisk whether real or not, Charley's existence changes Dexter's story. He takes the role of shadow, of mirror, of challenger. He forces us to see Dexter not just as a man running from his past, but as someone slowly collapsing under the weight of his own fractured mind. Asterisk, and in a world where truth and illusion are constantly blurring, Charley becomes the perfect question mark. The kind of character who lingers in your head long after the credits roll. Asterisk, Charley isn't just a character you can pin down with facts. He's more like a symbol, a living metaphor built into Dexter's world. To understand him fully, you can't just ask who is Charley, you have to ask what does Charley mean? And that's where things get interesting. Asterisk think of Dexter's life as a constant battle between two forces. On one side, you have order, Harry's code, the rules Dexter follows to give his darkness structure. On the other, you have chaos, the raw hunger to kill, the bloodlust that doesn't care about rules, victims, or consequences. Dexter survives only because he keeps those two forces in balance. But Charley tips the scales. Asterisk Charley represents the side of Dexter that doesn't want balance anymore. He is the voice of surrender. The idea that Dexter doesn't need Harry's code, doesn't need to justify his killings, doesn't need to hide behind masks. He's the whisper that says, you're not a man fighting against darkness. You are the darkness. Asterisk, and that's what makes him dangerous. Because Dexter has always relied on Harry's voice as a kind of anchor, even when Harry scolds him. It's still structure. It's rules. It's boundaries. But Charley is the undoing of those boundaries. He strips away the last bits of morality Dexter pretends to have. He's not a teacher. He's a mirror. And in that mirror, Dexter sees his truest self ugly, unrestrained, unstoppable. Asterisk symbolically, Charley can also be seen as the ghost of Dexter's guilt. Every person Dexter ever killed, every lie he told, every time he let blood spill where it shouldn't, those moments build up inside him. He buries them, but they don't disappear. They take shape. And that shape might just be Charley, a walking reminder that no matter how carefully Dexter hides his crimes, his soul is marked forever. Asterisk, but there's another way to read Charley. Some fans argue that he isn't guilt, he's freedom. For years, Dexter has been chained to the idea that he has to kill by the code, that he has to live by Harry's rules. Charley comes along and smashes those chains. He doesn't weigh Dexter down with guilt, he tempts him with liberation. He says, stop apologizing for who you are. Stop pretending to be something else. You are not broken. You are perfect as the monster you've always been. Asterisk, that's why every scene with Charley feels so charged. He's not just another voice in Dexter's head. He's the devil on his shoulder, offering him the easy path. And the easy path is always the most dangerous one. Asterisk.